Did you ever wonder where language comes from? This thing that I'm doing here, talking to you, where does it come from? The world's leading expert in language science doesn't know. He said that all the evidence we have says that language just came into being around 100,000 years ago. On an evolutionary scale, that's like yesterday. Some scientists get a bit more artistic with it. They say that language is the developing memory of the universe. I always thought that was a nice way to think of it.
And there's no analogies in other organisms, and certainly no homologous structures that anyone knows about, and no variation within the species, which makes the study of evolution of the capacity seem extremely difficult. Most serious evolutionary biologists consider it to be impossible because the kinds of evidence that would be relevant are just not present.
In the days of Socrates, in order to become a scholar in graduate school, one had to be able to recite Homer's epic poems in their entirety. Not an easy feat when you consider we're talking about thousands of pages. But then, in the time of Socrates and Homer, there were no such things as pages. This is what the Iliad and the Odyssey may have sounded like in the recital halls of ancient Greece.
Ektordos kai astepilas kai purgon hikanen. Amparamin truon lokhoit jonedet hygatres. Iromenai painaste kasignet ustetaste. Kai posias odepeta peoise okest hayanogi. Pasas hexies polleiside kede prepto. Al hotede priamoi odomon perigalle hikanen.
So the language part, where does it come from? The world's leading language expert is an older guy from MIT. He's not very popular because of something he's been saying for over 40 years. That if, as evidence suggests, there was a sudden and unevolved emergence of language, that we would have to reevaluate Darwin's theory of evolution. It's kind of a sore spot for scientists. One of them said that the expert's statement was absolutely biblical. He meant it as a jab, but I think he nailed it right on the head. And with that, I would like to wish my Jewish friends a kosher and happy Passover, and my Christian friends a happy Easter. To my pagan friends, remember the rabbit and the eggs. That's a nod to you guys, so grab a basket and get that Easter egg hunt on. You know, Socrates hated writing. He was terrified of it. He said, "What you have discovered is a recipe not for memory, but for a reminder. And it is no true wisdom that you offer your disciples, but only the semblance of wisdom. For by telling them of many things without teaching them, you will make them seem to know much, while for the most part, they will know nothing. And as men filled not with wisdom, but with the conceit of wisdom, they will be a burden to their fellows." It's a haunting statement. Have you ever noticed anything like it? That sometimes people filled with book smarts perceive themselves as smarter, more adept to the world, but in reality they fumble at many basic tasks. And rather than admit their mistakes, they might instead deflect responsibility by putting up a mirage of confusing language and blaming others. You've seen it, haven't you? I don't know what it's like in other places, but in 2008, the world economy collapsed due to, frankly, illegal activity. Ever notice that no one got fired? Everyone picked up right where they left off, just receiving a giant payoff. That's kind of what Socrates was afraid of. But it didn't really take writing to make that happen. They killed old Socrates after all.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. All my memories gather round her, miner's lady, stranger to blue water. Dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrop in my eye. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. I hear her voice in the morning hours, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday, yesterday.
The warnings of Socrates may seem quaint to modern humans. We use literacy as our mark of social intelligence, but the technology of writing holds a power over humans that most don't fully comprehend. If something is written down, it becomes powerful. Take the case of the man they call the Angel of Budapest, a Spanish ambassador named Socrates. In a 6-month period, from June to December of 1944, the ambassador and his assistants worked feverishly throughout the night to distribute fake Spanish papers to 5,200 Hungarian Jews. It is said that Breeze worked so hard that he would often fall asleep at his desk while signing and stamping papers, hoping desperately to save just one more person. The papers were written without the approval of the Spanish government at the time, who were themselves fascists and allied with the Nazis. They made use of an expired Spanish law and contained declarations that were completely invalid. Nevertheless, because they were written down, they worked. Oskar Schindler saved 1,200 people from the camps, but by the time Socrates was relieved of duty, he had saved nearly 5 times as many people, simply by adding their names to a piece of paper. So I've got an idea. Write this down. There's enough for everyone, and nobody has to be fighting over everything anymore. If you want to fight, we'll do like sports and stuff. Okay? How's your apocalypse going? You guys moved from toilet paper to ammo so fast that before I could blink an eye, nearly every round from San Diego to Sacramento had been hoarded away into somebody's gun safe. And they say that Californians hate guns. I've had friends reach out and ask if I knew where I could find any ammo. Here in Utah, you can buy a assault-style rifle in a convenience store. So yeah, there's still ammo here, folks. Most of the shelves have been cleaned out, but there's still stock in the back of some places if you know how to ask nicely. I would imagine that more is on the way. You pass a few ammo manufacturing facilities on the way into the northern part of the state on the freeway. It's been interesting to see what's left. Lots of 45 ACP ammo. That's sad because it shows how underrated the 45 is, man. That old 1911, I'll tell you what.
You know, I actually favor the old 1911.
45. Old gun.
Served my country well. Long time.
Your country. Not done too well though, have you? Last few wars.
Perhaps not, but at least we don't go around whining about it.
And what about the 44 Magnum? Nobody uses that. You never see that anymore. The dirty, hairy gun. You ever be on the shooting range and somebody comes with a hand cannon 44 Magnum? I mean, the sound coming out of the barrel of that gun. Somebody's in your house, you start blasting with that thing, they're gonna crap in their pants.
Oh, shit.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Hey. I got to know.
One time I was listening to Brian Greene being interviewed about the universe. Greene is a string theorist, a professor of physics at Columbia University, the author of The Elegant Universe. The interviewer asked him a question. Now, I know if you shot a cannonball in the air that you could tell me where it would land, or if I threw a dead bird in the air, you could calculate the trajectory and you could tell where it would land. But if I took a live bird and threw it into the air... Greene stopped the interviewer. I see what you're asking. If you threw a live bird in the air, could I theoretically tell you where it would land? Yes. It would just be a matter of being able to do that math. Greene was midway through explaining the possibility that we live in a dynamic universe-forming system where there are multiply occurring Earths created through this multiverse, and that our entire existence could be repeated identically somewhere else in the universe, just based on the sheer ability of random chance to produce an identical output, given an infinite amount of chances. I've always thought it interesting. In this modern world where we are told that God is dead, that the new ideas sound only slightly less strange than the old ones. And if you ask me what the biggest religion in the world is, I'm not going to point to some guy on his knees begging for answers on Saturday or Sunday. I'll point to nearly every man and woman and child on this earth, on their knees at least 40 hours a week, working for a piece of paper.
Our universities, many of them, our bureaucracies, our governments, our business community, are increasingly unable to think, which is to say, to think in an inclusive manner, which allows them to just say, well, wait a minute, why are we eating apples that have come from the other end of the world? Why are we doing that? And somebody will then give you some argument about globalization and the cheapest possible good and the marketplace. And they're all nonsense arguments. Because in fact, what it's an outcome of is the lack of putting all the costs together. And probably, the taxpayers are probably paying for part of the cost of the apple in New Zealand through subsidies of agricultural land and so on. So you don't actually getting the real cost of the apple, which allows them to sell it for less than it's actually cost. So a sort of decline in inclusive thinking and a rising admiration for the short-term results, and perhaps even more important, an admiration for short-term self-interest over an idea of the public interest and the public good. And if you stand back and look at it, most of what's now called rationality is really linear utilitarianism of a very low level. It's not rationality as it would have been understood by Voltaire. And the 20th century was filled with examples of that, of which probably the most interesting was not Hitler, but Mussolini. Because Mussolini brought with him about half the philosophers of Italy who believed in a very clear explanation of why democracy doesn't work and why citizenship doesn't work and why thinking by citizens doesn't work, and that in the place of that you would put this thing which Napoleon had almost invented, but which Mussolini really finalized, called corporatism. All of us, not simply in the West, but in India and China, in Bangladesh, have been living the outcomes of this corporatist, authoritarian idea, which of course is wedded closely to a worship of technology, because one of the central arguments as to why this theory is necessary is because progress is happening, and progress is linked to technology, and technology can't be stopped. Because the only way you can stop it, according to them, is by being backward. I can promise you that in most of the world, there is a solid agreement inside the departments of economics, and in a sense it's supported by the schools of management. So that even when you have a catastrophe like the financial collapse of very few years ago, no change takes place in the departments of economics. There is no change in what is taught in the first and second year. One just goes on with the same theories that brought, in a sense, the collapse upon us.
You were the longest-serving chairman of the Federal Reserve in history, and during this period of time, you were perhaps the leading proponent of deregulation of our financial markets. And my question for you is simple. Were you wrong? Be sure the mic is turned on.
Partially, but let's separate this problem into its component parts. I took a very strong position on the issue of derivatives. These derivatives are working well. Let me put it to you very specifically.
So you don't think you were wrong in not wanting to regulate the derivatives?
Well, it depends which derivatives we're talking about.
Okay.
Oh, this is my favorite event. Catch the greased-up deaf guy.
Go!
You're never gonna catch me. You're wasting your time. Forget about it.
else. Go do something else. See you next year.
You said in your statement that you delivered, the whole intellectual edifice of modern risk management collapsed. You also said those of us who have looked to the self-interest of lending institutions to protect shareholders' equity, myself especially, are in a state of shocked disbelief, end quote. Now that sounds to me like you're saying that those who trusted the market to regulate itself, yourself included, made a serious mistake.
Well, I think that's true of some products, but not all. I think that's the reason why it's important to distinguish the size of this problem and its nature. And what I wanted to point out was that the excluding credit default swaps, derivatives markets are working well.
Remember when I was talking about the people who make mistakes then might use a bunch of fancy language to try to put the blame on other people? He thinks for his fancy words that you won't understand what he just said. He just said that aside from the thing that broke the entire world economy, that everything he did was great. That's like you're at work and you set the building on fire. Then you go to the owner's house and you set that on fire too. And then when your boss asks you, well, hey, do you think it was wrong to set the office in my house on fire? You say, well, aside from setting all your stuff on fire, aside from that, my record is exemplary. Have you noticed how punctual I am? And it's important to know a little bit of history because Alan Greenspan failed his way up the ladder. For every major financial disaster of his lifetime, there is a newspaper article or some kind of clipping of him being on the wrong side of it. Even during the savings and loan scandal in the 80s, he came out and told us everything was fine right before the scandal broke, and everyone lost their shirt. In fact, you could have made a lot of money betting against everything that this man has said over his lifetime. And what do you do in the age of rationality with the guy whose financial predictions usually end in massive system-wide failures? Well, you put him in charge of all the money, of course. So I want to be really clear on something, because everyone tells me that we live in an age of reason. And you know, all of the old ways are stupid, and we have to listen to the really smart college-educated people who lie to us when they're wrong and refuse to take responsibility for their actions. This philosophy of the age of reason has delivered for us a system in which the least qualified person is given the greatest amount of power. And this is but one example of many. And I want to give a big thank you to the smart guys who decided to squash that ventilator startup back in 2003 so that their buddies who owned the more expensive ventilators could keep their profits. Yeah, that happened. Congress tried to get us a cheaper ventilator and built stockpiles, but the company with the expensive ventilator just bought them and killed the project. Well, anyway, let's take a break from all that. And, it's time for a pipe. I've got this chrome bag here. I like it. This is like a strap across your back kind of little man purse here. It's pretty cool. It's got a couple of slots. It's good to carry some pipe, some tobacco, and some other stuff. You can see it's rubber sealed, so it's waterproof here. You guys wanted to see the Peterson's 3P. I've had this for a little while. I've been wanting to try it. Not for too long, maybe only like a year. Let the modern era Assassini 4 dot rusticated. The old Glock 17. And just for clarification, I don't concealed carry. We just got back from shooting and I'm going to clean this gun. I was in a Walmart a while back and this kid was bagging my items. I mean, if he was 19, I would have been surprised. We were talking about pistols, and he said he concealed carries, and he mentioned that if things get bad, I'm going to pull out my gun and do what I'm trained to do. As this kid is bagging my stuff, I'm wondering, what is he trained to do exactly? If we're talking eat a dozen muffins in under 5 minutes, he's my go-to guy. If we're talking like take down an active shooter, I can just imagine being a cop. running into a place with an active shooter calling, "You've got young Rambo here, taking cover behind the potato chips, laying down fire." I don't know, maybe that works out, but it's a hell of a roll of the dice. Look at that. You know, it really is a perfect plug. Nicely pressed, not too tight. It's got a little sponge to it. Peel a little bit of that off. You can see how oily the leaves are. You know, Max Stokeby was just live on Instagram. I was watching one of his things. He was talking about how when the leaf is more oily, you get a more thick, billowy smoke. You know, somebody said that I would need a good knife for my 3P plug cutting experience, so this is my friend Tonto. He's coming to the party. A lot of people don't like the Tonto blade. Personally, I like it a lot, especially for this application here. Mostly because it gives you an ability to, you can press down just with the top of the blade, because most of these knives, they have a hilt or something that really keeps it from, cutting like a chef's knife all the way down to the board. Look at that there, that's just perfect. Try a couple different styles, but, ways to cut. But I found that this Tonto blade, when I just push down on the end like that, cuts it perfectly. I can really vary the thickness as much as I'd like. Alright, we're looking at Virginia leaf from Africa and Brazil, mixed up with the little burley from Malawi, which is also in Africa, incidentally. The tin note has a strong smell of figs, and as you saw, this leaf is very oily and wet, so we'll have to use the tobacco butler here to dry this out for a while. See, I just use this, I put it in there, it's just got a flip closed lid, it's not sealed or anything, so a great way to let your stuff dry out without having a cat or something, dog, come by and drop some fuzz into it. I really can't stress enough how important drying time is with this blend, so let's take some time and do another task here while we're waiting for that to get ready for us. Be honest, you can't look down that barrel without thinking of James Bond, can you? You know, I actually shot James Bond once and lived to tell about it. What do you think about that? With a camera, of course. Speaking of James Bond, I went out with my father the other day to try and pattern my Browning A5 to see how close I'm going to have to get to some of these turkeys. Anyway, we drove about 30 minutes into the wilderness and pulled over to the side, found a spot with a big hill that we could shoot into with no problems. I found that the Browning was having an issue with cycling its rounds, and so I only fired a few shots. Tested the 9mm out as well, this little Glock 17 here. Well, from about 50-60 yards out, it's not very pretty. The spread is super wide. You got about 4 or 5 pellets in that shot. Bunch more here. This is about maybe 25 yards out, so definitely gonna have to be a lot closer to these turkeys. You can see the spread's pretty wide though, at about 50, 60 yards out. As we were getting set up, brand new red Tesla rolled by real slow. You know, one of those electric cars. 2 minutes later, it cycled back around. It's a group of younger fellas looking for a place to shoot, same as us. All the ranges are closed down. The land we were on was marked for hunting, so no issues there. They pulled up and got out. They had just been down to Smith & Edwards, the country boy store, picked themselves up a whole arsenal of cheap Taurus pistols and some kind of modern-looking rifle that fired 45 ACP. I think that they call it an AR-45. Not a bad idea when all the 5.56 and 223 is gone. Anyway, they got out and I'm thinking of wrapping it up at this point. And they start to load their guns, trying to force the bullets backward into the magazine. Oh man, not like that. Social distancing, right? I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, and there's like the Ogden Mac Daddy crew rolling up in there, putting their bullets in backwards. Good night. Another kid asks, "Can I set up these cans?" "Sure, go ahead and put them in the snow, I'll wait." The kid runs over and places his cans. I'm putting stuff in the car. I turn around to see him take aim at a can. It's a hill full of snow, right? He puts the can all around like the only group of rocks on the hill. I mean, good thing these guys are putting their bullets in backwards, because they might have caught a ricochet. I get the kid to move his cans. Then I see the other dude is rifle ready to fire. He takes a shot, stops, smiles, recocks the gun. The chambered round falls out onto the ground. Takes aim again, click. He'd only put 2 rounds in. "What happened?" he said. "The other round's on the ground next to your feet there, my friend." And you know, I'm telling you these stories and showing you this gun because a lot of people have recently become first-time gun owners. Things look like they have the potential to get rough, and everyone rushed to the store to buy something to fight with. Now, I know that a lot of people would like me to say defend themselves with, but let's just do some real talk. You walk around carrying a hammer. What are you going to do to the first thing that looks like a nail? And you know, I love Thomas Jefferson, and I know a lot of people read Jefferson and they get their Gadsden flags out, start cleaning their guns while reciting, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." It's a catchy phrase, give you that. But you can't change the world at the barrel of a gun anymore. All you do is threaten the safety of good people around you. You know, there was never a big labor movement in the western United States. There's many reasons for that, but one of the main reasons was that back when those movements were being formed, some hotheads got the idea to blow up the LA Times, and it killed the labor movement in the West. No one wanted to support it after that happened. You can't move a force that has mastered the use of violence with violence. This is one of the reasons I always get upset at the Antifa crowd. Most of what they do in the streets is what I would call modern interpretive dance. They always tell me, what if somebody had stopped Hitler? If they stood up to him, they could have stopped World War II and the Holocaust. Whenever I hear that, I always say, wow, you are so smart. You're right. If someone only would have fought against the Nazis, like, say, the people that you're trying to emulate did, the anti-fascists of that era who fought the Nazis in the streets with rifles, there was legit street warfare. Antifa shot a beloved Nazi, and that was exactly what Adolf wanted. They used the dead Nazi as a martyr and went to the industrialists and said, "Who is strong enough to save you from the violence in the streets? We will protect you." You know, Antifa is actually an acronym. It stands for World's Biggest Foot Shooting Competition. who can make the biggest hole in the soul. If you want to make real change happen, you've got to humble yourself and do the hard work of bringing your brother over to your side of the aisle, using your mind and your language. A fellow once said, the tyranny that Athens imposed on others, it finally imposed on itself. Don't be a traitor to your country, especially when real change can be had through methods other than violence. Let's keep these guns for home defense, shooting, which is a lot of fun, and hunting. Also, to the guys who are walking around with the +1, you know what I'm talking about. If you're walking around with a bullet in the chamber of your gun ready to fire, what are you doing with your life, man? I asked a Force Recon sergeant if he ran with a +1 in his sidearm. He said that maybe the situation would call for it, but that you really have to weigh the 0.5 seconds you save by having to chamber a round versus being taken out of the fight with your own bullet in your leg because accidents happen. What kind of nickname you think you get when you shoot yourself in the foot? And I'll load this magazine for dramatic purposes, but I'll tell you another thing that he said. He didn't store any of his guns loaded. He said once, if I reach for that gun, I want to have to put a magazine in it and chamber a round. Because if that gun comes out of that drawer, that means that somebody is going to die. And I want to make sure I give myself at least one extra step to be able to stop myself if the situation doesn't warrant it. It's something for everybody, I think, to think about.
Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé.
All right, enough horsing around there. Let's pack up this Socrates Modern Era 4-dot. Rusticated, I love that. I love how this modern one emulates the old style. Really cool polished top there. With that classic Socrates rustication, really thin. I don't know, I guess that's wire rusticated. I'm not sure how they do that, to be honest with you. So I forgot to push the record button on the first light, but you get the idea. You've done this before yourselves. Had to tamp that thing down. This pipe's packed a little bit poorly. A little too much in there. You're gonna see this thing blow up into Godzilla-like style. A lot of people like everything to be perfect. They'll do things over and over again to try to make everything perfect. One of the best bits of advice I ever got was from an old R&D manager. He said that, he used to always say this. If you were working on something, you were kind of talking him through it, and he would tell you, what's the enemy of good? Perfect. This blend has a lot of fans. It's a pretty bold statement, the perfect plug. It does look like a perfect plug. Very well pressed. Lots of little crystallization from the juices flowing through the leaves. When you're pressing, you're breaking the cellular wall of the leaf. Extracting all the oil. If you've ever seen a leaf pressed, you can see the juices flowing out like a very viscous oil. Almost like a motor oil. And when you get that oil pressing through multiple layers of leaf, that's, it's basically almost like an infusion. The crystallization of the leaf as the plug ages helps with the richness of the flavor. That's what Stokeby was saying, that the more oil in the leaf, the more rich and, full the smoke is, expansive. So, this blend is beloved by many, and, for myself, Virginia and Burley is just a perfect combination. I really enjoy it. But for me, I don't know if this, I don't think it's the topping that bothers me, because I really do like, topped blends. But I just haven't found this to be the approachable, like half and half, say, a very fine Virginia Burley mix. This is more, those flavorings are a little bit more raisiny. There's more of a sourness almost to it. That, a lot of people say that, the process of preparing this blend is really key. If you're not drying it out enough, maybe I hadn't dried it out. I mean, I dried it out 2 days in the Tobacco Butler. Or maybe now on day 3. It's a bit sharp. Some people have noted that the nicotine bomb is, effective. Of course, it's got burley, so that's usually an indicator of a blend with a larger amount of nicotine, but I never noticed this to be too heavy. I almost feel like the Virginia is a lemony bronze Virginia that's trying to be a Navy Rolls type Virginia, if you get my meaning. Like there's that, a lot of times I get like an orange kind of citrusy flavor. There's like that, kind of a breadiness maybe, but there's also this kind of, it's like a light leaf trying to be dark, and it's throwing me off, boys. Somebody might recommend what I'm doing wrong here, but I think it might be that it needs to sit in the cellar for many a moon. Is that what I'm doing wrong here? I don't know. We'll think about it. It's a supermoon tonight, right? I heard about that.
Watching cityscapes turn to dust, filming helicopters crashing in the ocean from way above. Got the music in you, baby, tell me why. Got the music in you, baby, tell me why. You've been locked in there forever and you just can't say goodbye. Kisses on the foreheads of the lovers wrapped in your arms. You've been hiding them in hollowed out pianos left in the dark.
Well, congratulations, my friend. You made it to the apocalypse. And I'm sorry, Mario. The princess is in another castle. It's not the end of the world after all. You're here now at the door of the unveiling. As it turns out, everybody is full of it. Nobody knows a damn thing. Although we're all trying our best, and as per usual, greed and a bunch of plain old tomfoolery is costing us sorely. And I don't want people to think I'm picking on science. A lot of my close friends are naturalists and have performed in-depth, quality research that is valuable to constructing the story of human life. Do you know that the new elites don't talk about nation states anymore? Did you know that technocrats believe that the next empire will not be in China, but in cyberspace? As we move forward, one foot in front of the other, it's important to remember that you're not alone in your car. You're not alone in your apartment. You're not alone in your big house. There are people all around you. And the best chance of changing the world starts with, if you go back and look at the patents, nobody really invented the light bulb or the radio. Rather, people did invent these things, but they sprang up all around the globe almost at the same time. When you change how you perceive the world, when you choose compassion over competition, you're not just changing yourself. It's happening somewhere close to another person also. One by one, just like a bunch of radios springing up somewhere. Change the world. So, as we stand at the edge of what will be the end of the world for some people, maybe even myself, let's try not to steal people's faith with fancy words which, scientifically speaking, in the end are meaningless as wind in dry grass or rat's feet over broken glass. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. And for those of you who still hold your faith, where did language come from? Most of language is the expression of the thoughts in your head. The thought, the word. Where did the word come from? I don't know. No one does. Sometimes I imagine it to be something like, in the beginning was the word.
Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without love of my own. Blue moon, you knew just what I was there for.
I'm gonna leave you here with this rising moonlight. Just enjoy this tranquil peace of mind as long as you can. God bless everybody.
You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without love of my own. Without love of my own.
Zoe written on a Zoe say, Bingo Moon is on his way. None of you stand so tall. Bingo Moon gonna get you on to Bingo Moon. Yes, Bingo Moon. Bing, 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 bing. Bingo Moon. Bing, 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 bing. Bingo Moon. Zoe written and a Zoe say, Bingo Moon is on his way. None of you stand so tall. Bingo Moon gonna get you home. It's a Bingo Moon. Yes, Bingo Moon.
Strange how you stopped loving me, how you stopped needing me when she came along. Oh, how strange. Strange, you changed like night and day, just up and walked away when she came along. Oh, how strange. Well, I guess that I was just your puppet you held on a string. To think I thought you really loved me, but look what thoughts can bring. Strange, you're still in all my dreams. Oh, what a funny thing. I still care for you. Oh, how strange. Well, I guess that I was just your puppet you held on a string. To think I thought you really loved me, but look what thoughts can bring. Oh, strange, you're still in all my dreams. Oh, what a funny thing. I still care for you.